Okay, what is up there, YouTube? This is J-Man Time, and today I have a video on one of the strangest topics from the Second World War. And this topic here is one that I'm pretty sure many of you World War II fanatics don't want to hear about, but it is still an interesting topic nonetheless. And this topic is the LGBT soldiers in the German Wehrmacht, or regular army. Now, unlike the Waffen-SS, which was mostly a volunteer army, the Wehrmacht was largely a conscript army, meaning that many of the German soldiers that fought in the Wehrmacht were conscripted by the government, just like most of the Allied soldiers they were facing in the American, British, and Soviet army. So they really didn't have a choice but to join the military if they were called up. As a result, you had hundreds of thousands of LGBT German citizens who were now in the German army, the regular German army, the Wehrmacht. These were your gay men, your transvestites or cross-dressers that would now be considered transgendered, and you also had your lesbian women, your lesbian cross-dressers or your female cross-dressers, and your bisexual men also. So all of these men and women all ended up in the Wehrmacht in some capacity, either as soldiers or as nurses in the case of women. You also had some LGBT pilots in the German military. Many of the photos that you're seeing right now are mostly private photographs that were taken by soldiers, mostly during their time of relaxation in the Second World War. There were plenty of photos that were largely lost to history until the families of the soldiers were later auctioned off their private photo collections to various collectors across the planet. One of these collectors is a German researcher and artist by the name of Martin de Man. And de Man actually published a book a few years ago about LGBT soldiers in the German regular army, or the Wehrmacht, and that's where most of these photographs come from. Martin de Man spent at least 5 or 10 years researching this topic and had collected hundreds of photos from soldiers that were mostly deceased by then who had served in the regular army of Germany during the Second World War, the Wehrmacht, or the photos were donated to him by the families of those soldiers years after the fact. So there are tons of photos that probably haven't been published yet that are still hidden or tucked away somewhere in the family possessions of various soldiers that once served in the Wehrmacht. During the Second World War, you also had many German prisoners. These were literal convicts, people who had committed crimes in Germany that were also sent to the German regular army. The Germans would take ex-convicts and send them to the army. These are mostly men. In the case of the women would end up being nurses in the army. Back in the 1930s and 40s, one of the crimes you could go to prison for was being gay. Being gay in Germany, or anywhere really, was actually considered a crime in many countries. So you could actually be in prison for being gay or bisexual or coming out as a cross-dresser or a transvestite. Transvestite was pretty much the transgendered of the 1930s and 40s, before the term transgender became a thing in the modern world. There are even photos, rare police photos, these were photographs taken by the German police of male cross-dressers and transvestites that were arrested by the German police and were later sent to the military. So these were your LGBT cross-dressers, or femboys as they call them nowadays, who were arrested for either sex work on the street or for other reasons, and they were later sent to the German regular army. So as a result, you have tons of photos, most of these photos have never been published, you have tons of photos of literal cross-dressers and their regular army boyfriends just hanging out at various underground bars and restaurants. They had tons of underground bars and restaurants throughout Germany and the occupied countries also. So it wasn't just in Germany itself, this would also happen in many of the occupied countries as well, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, France, Belgium, and even in the occupied parts of the Soviet Union. So you had these underground LGBT parties, either gay parties, lesbian parties, or in some cases just straight up cross-dresser or transvestite parties. They even had cross-dresser and transvestite fashion shows, or in some cases strip clubs. These were underground LGBT strip clubs, either in Germany or in some of the occupied territories that were run by members of the regular German army or the Wehrmacht, even from the SS, as I have seen at least 1 or 2 photos of what looks like Waffen-SS members at some of these underground LGBT parties and dances in strip clubs. Some of the photographs you're seeing are rare photos that were private photos. Many of these German soldiers would have secret parties, dances, and balls where they would meet up with their partners, usually their boyfriends, or in some cases their cross-dresser or transvestite boyfriend or girlfriend. And you also have some rare photos of German nurses with their lesbian partners, some of whom were reversed cross-dressers. These were female cross-dressers who dressed up as men for their lesbian partners. So all in all, these photographs are extremely rare. Only a few hundred of these have ever been published in any books or magazines, and there are probably thousands of these photographs, and maybe even some archival footage that have yet to be shown to the public. Germany's LGBT soldiers from the Second World War. These are your gays, your lesbians, your transvestites, your cross-dressers, and just your general bisexual men and women. So what do you all think of this? This here is one of the truly forgotten sides of the German regular army that many Westerners have not seen in the modern era, at least. And most of this was pretty much hidden from the general public back then, and even now to an extent in the 21st century. So what do you all think of this? So please tell me in the comment section below. And until next time, this was J-Man Time, signing off.